It is written that all things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. But this, of course, is a biblical statement, which I have learned that it has more broad and secular application. Just to say that for anybody who is willing, anything can work for you. He says that he makes all things work together for my good. But in in practice, what this means is just that whatever happens to you in life, the meaning of what happens resides with you. Because a lot of the times we always tend to think that if a bad thing happens to me, I have to react in a certain way. If people insult me, if people bully me, if people, then I have to kind of take on a certain victimhood persona. I have to behave everywhere I go like I'm a victim because I was bullied when I was in high school. I have to, because my parents treated me a certain way, so therefore in my adulthood I ought to be a certain kind. But it doesn't have to be, because there is action and there is reaction. The action happens without you release. Things happen to us without our consent. You get raped, you get robbed, you get duped. You people, all men now. You find yourself in a relationship where you are being abused, whether emotionally, financially, or physically. Um, things happen to us. Shit happens. Life happens. But your reaction to it does not have to be like everyone else's. There are people who get raped and they become suicidal. Others, the same thing happens to them and they flip it around. They become a beacon of other uh, people who were in the same situation, to say, this is how you can overcome this. This is how you rebuild your image of how you see men, so you don't see all men as rapists. This is how you go on about this. Many of these people become motivational speakers, they become inspiration to other people who were in the same situation. Um, a good example, I think, is Joyce Meyer. She's the one I can pick at the top of my head. That a person who was raped in their childhood and now is a preacher, she has had to do a lot of work over the years, inner work, but she is what she is now. If you want inspiration, you want hope, that's sort of her specialty. I haven't watched her in a while, so maybe she has changed. But when I knew Joyce Meyer, it was about inspiration, crawling out of addiction, out of a dark place, out of that inferiority complex, out of self pity. That was her thing, because she went through the thing. But what happens, it seems a lot of us in this generation have gotten to a space where we, I'm not saying there are not people who are affected by depression, by anxiety, but most of the times I feel like many people do not genuinely want to overcome these things. Many of them talk of them like it's an achievement. Like, I'm depressed again, and my depression, my anxiety, all this, my ADHD, which I feel like, okay, maybe ADHD is a different situation. It's not in this category. But what I'm saying is, many of these things, whether it's anxiety, you have inferiority complex, things that we do as a reaction to life happening to us, these are things we can overcome. You don't have to have an inferiority complex in life. You don't have to go through life depressed. You don't have to be anxious. You don't have to fear relationships. You don't have to. your relationship with money is just sketchy. You're just when you like I know a number of people who were like their phones were grabbed, right? You go to a point where for these people it's sort of like a phobia to walk around in public with their phone like that. Like nothing more happened to them except the phone being grabbed. But like the reaction. Now, what I'm advocating is for us to go beyond the reaction to the event and getting our lives back. I will speak in my situation. I happen to just find myself in a religious cult, right? And this thing really messed me up. The way I saw the world, I was always paranoid. It messed my mind up so much in my life in many ways. And there was a bit of a period when I got out where I was really in that victimhood thing, blaming God, blaming the pastor, blaming the people he introduced me to the thing. And what I realized throughout this whole period is that you can blame as many people as you want. You can be a victim as much as you want, but this does not solve your problem. Yes, my mind was turned inside out. I was made to believe in something that happened, was not true. But how do I get my life back? How do I get in a space where, because there was a lot of sleep deprivation in this thing, so my sleeping patterns were messed up. Sometimes you would sleep and you just, like, you have those, you get out of bed, you are in shock, and it was things I had to work through, but I had to make a determination and say, I cannot live like this. And as long as I was pointing fingers at everybody else, I was not helping myself. There was no solution for me. Maybe the pity party is a nice thing for people to come around and say, oh, he was in a cult. Oh, he was, you were this. But it does not help you. You do not move anything. Your financial life does not become better. Your mental health does not become, nothing good comes out of a pity party. Nothing good comes out of feeling sorry for yourself. So, because when bad things happen, it forces you to withdraw from the world and go within. And I think this withdrawing from the world and being in solitude is what tends to become like chronic depression for many people, because when you withdraw and go within, it's a good thing if you tap into your power, right? And into your ability to really make your internal dynamics pleasant. And for me, this took reading a lot of books, listening to a lot of people who have been in these situations before, and really just building up my mental strength, my resilience, building up my discipline, and making sure that I rebuild my mind, because I was messed up. To say that you come out of this situation, and I adopted from then, I really adopted this mentality that whatever happens to you, you never have to be a victim. Whatever happens to you in life, you never have to carry that thing. That thing does not have to define you. You carry the power within you to define what that situation means for you. You were, like in my case, I was in a cult and I lost like sort of, I went there when I was, I think, 18, 19, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I was there like for 5 years. My whole young adulthood, transitioning from teenage to an adult, was in a cult. So you can imagine what this does to you. I was not on social media. I told everyone what they needed to hear. But do I then come around and let this thing define my life? Or do I look into this situation and I say, what can I use from this to turn my life around? Because for 5 years, there were a lot of practices that were happening. If I could believe what was being told there, though it was crazy, can I now not believe then that apply the same principle of believing but turn it to my favor and say, I believe I can go to school and um, build, get some academic things going. I believe I can start a business and build it up. I believe that I can speak, maybe. I believe that I can write books. I believe so that whatever has happened to me becomes fuel, right? For me to build the life that I want. But a lot of that is inner work. And I think that's where a lot of this generation fails, right? Because there's nothing inside. A lot of us are in this generation are so used to things being handed to us. You cannot wave away depression with an app. You can't do that. You can't. It's not about reading one book or even two. This is a thing you have to commit to and really commit to changing bad patterns of behavior, bad patterns of thinking, really being disciplined. Because sometimes you find people in tricky situations, they tell you, no, I'm going through this. And then you tell the person, maybe, do you work out? No. Have you considered? No, it's too much for me. I'm like, working out by itself is not a cure to depression, but it's a first step. Because if you can have um, control over your body and tell it what to do at what time, then it also translates to the mind. First, the body, you capture the body and it moves to the mind, which means if you can discipline yourself, I wake up at this time, I do this at this time, you have a schedule, your thoughts will not run wild because there is structure. If you have this structure long enough, it becomes your baseline that your thoughts don't just bombard you and you lose control, and then it multiplies into a thing you can't control. You start crying, you start panicking. But this is to begin getting back control. It begins with physical workout. That you tell someone, "Do you work out?" No, it's too much for me. And I'm like, because these are things anybody. All I can do is maybe give you pointers. All anyone can do is give you, but we can't. Because I think this is why depression is also, and all these things are they are such difficult things to tackle, right? Because there are things. It's a thing that you ought to pull yourself out of. All anyone can do is maybe help you, talk to you, guide you, but you have to do the work. And a lot of us in this generation, we are used to apps, we are used to things, we are used to you order, a car comes, a Yango comes to get you at your gate, you order, the KFC is coming at home, the pizza, you order, everything is, you press a button and you pay a few dollars, something arrives. But when it comes to internal work, it doesn't work like this. You still, it's the old fashioned way. You have to put in the work. You have to show up. You have to develop that grit, that internal strength to say, I can do this. And this is where I think a lot of people in our generation, we are losing it because we don't have that within us anymore. You just see yourself becoming fat and you're just going. Once you had a body, all you do is, oh, I don't know what to do. But you cannot commit to a workout regimen long enough. You cannot commit to a discipline of, maybe if you are religious, of prayer, of reading the Bible, of, because these things help us overcome the darkness. But you are not even willing to do that. Therefore, we assume this blame, you know? Yeah, like this because, like, how long? I know our parents were not perfect. They did what they did. They did the best they could, some of them in the situation that it was. But at what point does your life transition to, you know, this is what I have done, this is what I need to do? Because you talk to people that are in their 20s and you find that people are still blaming their parents for a lot of things. No, it's because my mother did, my father, because my uncle, because I'm like, but when do you become your own person? Because if you turn this around and you find a lot of people that are fairly stable these days, because then no one is going, no, my dad did, or I'm successful now because my parents, like, People take success, it's like someone who said all of us are self-made, whether financially, emotionally, or what. We are self-made, but only those who are successful admit it. Like if you create a business or you graduate, you get a job, you're like, yeah, I worked hard, I did what no one wants. But whenever things go wrong, then no, it's this uncle's fault, my mother did not, that's why I'm like this. But it has to come to a point where you have to stop blaming people. Does this mean that no one ever does you dirty? That people did not wrong you in your childhood? That they did not give you enough love or do A, B, C? That there was no, they did, but blaming them does not help you. It just keeps you in bondage because the power is still with them. It's like you want your life to be better, but you are saying unless that person changes, then I cannot also change. Which you are going to be in that state forever. But if you say, yes, my parents did me dirty, my uncle, but how then do I become better? So it stops. It's like there's a Chinese proverb, I think, that says that he who blames others has not yet even begun. He who blames himself is halfway there. And he who blames no one has already arrived. That's to say that as long as you keep shifting blame, that I'm poor because of ABC, I am not okay mentally because of CDF. I am not, no, my relationship don't work because my ex. As long as you are here, I'm telling you, you will remain there. And the next person you get might even be worse than the one you have now. Because you need to learn how to do the work. And that work is you read material, you read books, you work out if you have to, you listen to podcasts, you listen, like these things. Because sometimes when people are like, these people are what, this. But I know how much listening to podcasts and reading books has helped me. How exercise has helped me to rebuild myself from a place of darkness, place of uncertainty to a point where I have clear direction and I overcame a lot of things because knowledge is power, but you have to apply it. And this only happens when you bring back your power within yourself to say, whatever has happened in my life so far, I'm not innocent. I had a role to play. Even if you did not have a role to play, you must own it. Own whatever has happened to you. When you own it, you stop blaming people and then you begin to work because the damage is done. Now, to go and say, no, it's also who did it, it does not fix the damage. But assessing what the damage is and working on how to fix it yourself, this fixes this damage. This is the point I'm trying to get us. Stop pointing fingers for your financial situation, for your uh, emotional, mental situation, whatever. Your relationships don't work. Take responsibility. Take responsibility because some of us have some things that we need to unlearn. And as long as you don't unlearn those things, you will keep choosing shitty partners because you have not done. It's like we keep running away from doing the work. Because I always say that this, when I think every human being has gone through um, some bad shit happens and you take some time. It's a state of depression, I would want to call it. And I always think that that state is a very good state for one to re-evaluate your life. Because I'm not talking about, that kind of, which seems a lot where you don't want to talk to anybody, you don't want to, you are suicidal, you are no, not, but there is a state of, because when you are too happy, you don't feel, you don't see the problems clearly. But when something really bad happens and it makes you sit down, you are not happy at all in that state. You are thinking about what what went wrong. I believe that we should take it when you find yourself in such a state, instead of being sad and drinking it away, and face the thoughts and work things out. A lot of us don't want to take time in reflection. That's why we're always trying to escape. There's always loud music around, there's always one thing, movies. You are going out too much, because it's like you are trying to, these things are not wrong, but you go out and you drink and you do what to celebrate or to, but if you are doing these things to escape this this and you escape the whole year, there will be a time that will come that these things will find you, that you are not able to escape. Because I think depression in small dosages is a good thing. It helps you reflect. The problem for many of us is we don't deal, because I think that state of depression is a good natural state, like to be in. It happens to everyone. Where something happens and you just sit and go, you are pondering, you are reflecting, going through something, right? Questioning, trying to reevaluate, right? And your mind works well there because you are looking inward. It's good in small dosages. The problem with many of us, I think, is we postpone this thing too much. It comes now, you drink alcohol. It comes now, you listen to music, you go out with friends, you are never alone. And then you postpone for the whole year. Maybe some even 2 years, you are partying every day. When this thing now comes, the different states of things you are supposed to deal with for the past 2, 3 years, or it hits you all at once, and then you really become suicidal because you refuse to deal with things that you're supposed to deal with at some point. So it's important. I try as much as I can. Every Saturday, I try to just switch off gadgets if possible, and if I can go in the mountains, go hiking, go somewhere. I mean, I used to go to church, but I don't really go anymore. So that has become my point of reflection, to gather my thoughts, think about what I've done, think about my week, think about the different aspects, think about how I'm doing, how it's important. But a lot of us do not attach value to these things. We want things to get wrong. When you are in a state where you can't sleep, you can't, it's now when you want to make assessments, you know. But this is why people say prevention is better than cure. Every time I wake up in the morning to do yoga, or I meditate, or I go play soccer, or I exercise, or I do these reflections very often, you think I'm just maybe a discipline junkie. No, 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 no. I'm doing this because I know the consequences of not doing these things. Because things pile up, right? So, approach our approach to mental health should not be when things go haywire. It should be an everyday thing, right? Or a weekly thing, if it can, in small dosages. Because you can imagine, like, there are people who, they postpone this module. This one, we'll push it to next year. Now you find yourself, you're in an exam. Other people are writing 5 modules, you are writing 8 or 10. You can imagine the pressure under which you are, and you still want to complain because you postpone things which you refuse to deal with in that time. And the one thing I know with life is that you cannot escape. You know, uh, you can't, right? Whatever you need to deal with, you will have to deal with. The only thing you choose is, do you take it on, or do you wait for it to come to you, right? It's like a thing, if you owe people, right? All these big institutions, when you have owed them for long enough, they take your name to the debt collectors, right? And eventually, if this does not happen, at some point, they take your name to for some blacklisting or something, where you are not allowed to take more debt again unless you pay this thing. And I think this is how many of us approach our things, especially when it comes to internal workings, the workings of our mind, our mental health. Our approach to it is wrong for many, because we always wait for something to go wrong. A failed relationship, uh, maybe someone passes on, we always wait for things to go wrong. Then all of a sudden we want to be all over the place. Oh no, my mental health, my. But can you have an everyday approach to this thing? Like with food, right? To stay healthy, you need to eat daily. And it's not just eating anything, it's eating proper food, right? So even when it comes to the mind, the things you are, because the one thing I've noticed being, especially when you get in those moments where like your mind becomes a bit sensitive to certain things, right? There are certain movies that I don't know, I become sensitive to watching when I'm in those states of where you know that you are not really okay going through something. It's like there are certain movies you can't watch, certain interactions you don't want to have, certain kinds of music and then when I come back to myself and I've sort of worked out my things and I'm normal again, I realize that there are certain types of music, there are certain kind of movies which are really detrimental to us just watching it. But we don't pick up on these things. You just find yourself things are wrong. You don't know why you are okay. I mean, why you are not okay. But it's because we don't pay attention. We should learn to pay attention to your everyday life, not just the thing of things are wrong, you don't know what is wrong. If you don't know how can anybody else know?